The Power Factor Show with Rick, Steve, and Caleb. Episode 54.
You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Brought to you by Safariland.
Hi, welcome back to Power Factor. I'm Rick. We're back again here with John Larson at JPL Precision, and we're going to do a little work on detail stripping the 1911 style pistol. And as you see here on this table, we've got a standard bushing barrel single stack, and then we've got our fancy 2011 high cap. Oh, with the cool scope mount.
It's one of those sideways things that we discussed last time you were here.
Right. So John's going to do a little detail stripping, and not just your usual YouTube style, take it apart, here's where the screwdriver goes, but we're going to discuss the inspecting the gun for issues with things like extractor tension, worn or damaged parts, and so you get a little bit more of a full meal deal here with John than you do with Bubba on YouTube. So let's take a little bit closer look here.
So we're going to detail strip this Colt 1911, and as Rick mentioned just a moment ago, to me, there's lots of different ways to do stuff, and I'll probably do stuff differently than you have seen before, or maybe not, but the techniques that I use, they work really good for me. The tools that I use, I've spent a lot of time figuring stuff out for me, and it seems to work well for me. So the first thing you want to do, if you're going to take your gun apart, is make sure it's not going to go bang on you. So we want to check and make sure it's empty. There's nothing in there. Dry fire it even. So the first thing I do to take it apart is take the safety out of it, the thumb safety. So the hammer has to be cocked to do that. I put the safety on and then bring it back down a little bit, and you can feel it. You can just see where it just moved out, and then I'll put my thumb over the back of it in case the plunger wants to get lost over in the corner of my shop with all the other plungers that I haven't done that with. And it's probably a good idea also to have a small receptacle to put the pieces in. So if I was going to really inspect this, and I guess I am, I would take a look at the part when it comes off and see if there's anything unusual about it. And in this case, no, it's a narrow, single-sided thumb safety, and you can see where the safety has been up against the sear to block it like it's supposed to be. So there's really nothing, unusual or extraordinary about that. So then I'd move on. So to remove the mainspring housing, I need to find a wrench of an appropriate size that will fit these screws. And that's not it. Go in there. Later. Those were a little tight. It's been a long time since I've taken this apart. It's been a long time since I've shot it. And a punch that will fit into the dimple that's in the pin. Not one that's flat that you're going to tear up the frame or any of that fun stuff. Nice miss. So the mainspring housing, the grip safety, and the leaf spring. And then I kind of turn them on their side, and in this case the pins just fell out, which is just fine. The hammer, the sear, disconnector, and these fabulously wonderful levers for the firing pin safety system. So now we've got all the fire control stuff out of this. So this has a 2-piece guide rod in it, which requires a wrench to unscrew it. of a better size. This will take me an hour to find the right wrench. There it is. You need a better lens. So that's out. And then I don't know how tight this bushing is. So I'll use plastic bushing wrench to depress the plug. And turn the bushing. Get the plug out. Pull the spring out. And then the slide stop should come right out. Here's the guide rod head with a beat up shock buff on it. Oh, I must have fit this. It's pretty tight. And then use the barrel as a wrench to pull the bushing out. So the only thing we haven't done now is get a screwdriver and remove the mag catch and the mag catch lock. And this is not a screw. A lot of guys think this is a screw. And they'll break one and then they'll know. And what this is a tab on this, little pin. And that tab is what rotates to lock the magazine catch, mag release itself, into the frame and the spring. And then the trigger should fall right out of the frame. And that is pretty much a stripped frame. With the plunger spring assembly out of it now too. Now we're back with the slide. And I want to take the firing pin stop out of it. And of course, because it's Series 80, I need 3 hands and 2 punches to make this work. So I need to depress the plunger to let the firing pin go all the way forward, and then pull the firing pin stop out, pull the firing pin out, and now the plunger won't come out because the extractor's still in it. And I move the extractor just enough to let the plunger and its spring out. So this being a 45, should just be able to push straight back and the extractor should come out of it without having to lever the front of it over so that the hook will clear the breech face. On 9mm and 40 caliber pistols, you will have to move the hook over to get it to come back. So this pistol is basically disassembled now. And if it was really dirty, and this one isn't, because it hasn't been shot since I cleaned it about 5 years ago. Now would be the time to go through and clean it. But we'll do that in a future episode. Now that the pistol is all apart, what you really want to do is take a look at each of the components, and see what's going on with it. If there's anything unusual, if there's any cracks, strange wear marks, stuff that would kind of alert you to something is not right here. And it's just really looking at it. And 1911s will sometime crack at the dust cover right at the front of the rails. Some 1911s just have like a tombstone window cut in this area, and the rails are solid like this side all the way forward. Sometimes they will crack there. Sometimes they will crack coming down from this cut where the slide stop goes into the frame. So I just really look at them, look at it, and see, if there's anything that jumps out at me. This looks really good. I also like to look and see where the barrel has been stopping on the frame. And this one has not a very pronounced bow tie cut, but you can see the bow tie which is where the back of the barrel you want that to make contact. The back of the barrel right at the top, and you can see it on here where it has the shape of a bow tie right at the bottom radius and right at the top of the cut for the link. That's what's making contact with the frame in the corresponding area right here, which stops the barrel every time the gun fires. That's what stops the barrel going to the rear. So you want to take a look at that and make sure it's not beat up. Sometimes you'll see in a pistol where there's marks that run down the face of the vertical impact surface. That's what this area is called, the VIS. And what is happening in those cases is the bottom of the feet of the barrel are making contact before it is at the top. That will strip the bottom lug right off of the barrel over time. I've seen that happen. It's not pretty. So then, you take a look at the barrel too. You want to take a look at the lugs. You want to make sure that nothing is peening over on the corners, and that would be indicative of a timing problem, which is not good. Just again, generally take a look at it. Look at the muzzle. Make sure there's no nicks that are going into the bore area, because that will cause an inaccurate gun. It won't be consistent in where it puts the shots. I look at the back of them. Many factory 1911s out there will actually contact, and this one looks like it's doing a little bit, the rear face of the barrel in the slide. And I can see it from here where it is contacting it, rather than making contact at the hood. You really want the hood making contact with the breech face and then going up into battery. This pistol does not do that. This is a typical Colt, which is very similar to a typical para ordnance. But that's just the way Colt sets them up. They've done it for 100 years almost, and well, in fact, 100 years, and they'll run a long time that way. They'll be relatively accurate that way, but it's just not right as far as I'm concerned on how to fit a barrel. So as long as we got the slide, the other thing I look at is the breech face, and what's happening on the breech face. Is there any erosion where primers have been leaking? It's been cutting the breech face. I have somewhere around here a replaceable breech face out of an SV pistol that looks like somebody took a torch to it, and it looks like it's flame cut around the primer hole, and because that pistol was leaking gas. Individual was using brass long after its useful life, and it's just not good. The other thing is I look for cracks in here too. I have a slide on one of my pistols that cracked out of the extractor hole along the bottom about 1/4 of an inch back up into the slide here. So again, just looking for stuff that could be a problem. We already looked at the lugs on the barrel to see if they were okay. Now I want to look at the corresponding lugs in the slide and make sure they're not flanged over or being beaten or anything, and these look good. And again, just looking at stuff, looking for cracks. Slides will crack. I've seen several that have cracked right from the top of the port down the left-hand side. And not so much on the right-hand side where you think, well, there's not as much material, shouldn't be as strong, should live longer. But no, not the case in my experience. So this looks really good. I'm not surprised by any of this stuff. It's a little dry, which is probably because I haven't shot it in a long, long time. And as far as other parts, the trigger, I just take a look at it, see what it's looking like. Is it free in the slot? You can check fit. You want it to go back and forth effortlessly, if I can say that word right. And you want minimal This one's not bad. Minimal up and down movement in it. This has just a little tick, which is not bad at all. Many factory triggers, it'll just really flop around. The back of the bow will then move around, and it just doesn't lend itself to really nice trigger jobs. So now I'm going to go start pulling parts out. So the mag catch spring, and the mag catch lock. So this has a cut spring on it rather than putting a reduced power spring in it, because I didn't want the big stiff spring in it. And I'll put that down at the end. That's not going to be moving back and forth. So I'll put the catch lock into the closed end, put it back into its slot, get my handy dandy little screwdriver out again, and we'll put this back in the frame. Notice I'm not putting any oil on anything. It's for my friend Rick, likes to carry his gun a lot, and I know he doesn't want any oil showing up, at his waistband as it leaks out of the gun. And to put these in and take them out, you have to move the mag catch, or the mag release itself, back and forth. And you'll feel when you found the slot that the catch locks into. So that's in there, the trigger's in there. And now this is an area that's going to get real interesting for me. So I want the disconnector, the sear, and the levers. So some people will stack these pieces together, the sear and the disconnector, and then set them in the pistol as a unit. I don't do that. Come on. Don't. And I want to start the sear pin into the frame. And sometimes you need something from the other side to line it up. Because now I'm going to put the levers back in. And these can sometimes be very interesting. So that one is in. I think I even put it in the right way. And this one's not going to want to go. It's going to make me take it apart. There it is. So the upper lever is in. The hammer's in. And if I could reach for the pin, and the hammer pin is in. So when you pull back on the trigger, this lever comes up. And that works, with the plunger and the slide. So now we got that in. A lot of people have fun putting leaf springs back in for some reason, and having usually the left leaf not stay where it's supposed to stay. So I get the strut up out of the way because it's not doing me any good down there. So this is all open now. Lay that in there, hold it in with my finger, and go find the mainspring housing. And put that in about halfway, and that will hold the spring, so I can do whatever I want now with getting the rest of these parts in and not have to worry about the spring falling off from where it's supposed to be. So that's in there. The grip safety needs to go in before the mainspring housing goes all the way upward. It just has to. Especially this design. There are some designs out that the arm on the grip safety is cut down in here, so it will clear the corner of the frame, and you can remove these with the mainspring housing all the way up. This one, not so much. So just set that in there, then move it around to make sure you get the strut in the center. I tilt it back so the strut then goes into the pocket in the mainspring cap. And now I get to go search for the pin. And I've just gotten in the habit where I put the pins in from the left to the right. Just works for me. Push down just to get it started. And then my favorite tool of all is the leather hammer, because now I get to hit it. I live all day to be able to do this. And that's flush. This should cock, and it does. And it should release, and it does. So now we'll put the plunger spring back in. We will cock the pistol, the thumb safety, and I have this handy dandy little pin pusher which is made specifically for this job to push the plunger in so you can move the safety over and into the frame. And that's in there. So now comes the slide. And we're still looking at parts and bits and pieces. So I'll look at the extractor and make sure that the hook is still there, which is always handy to have a hook to pull the empty out, because these will break off. We'll check tension on it when we put it all back together. The spring and the plunger. So we got the extractor in the pistol, and I want to put the plunger and the spring back up in here. And then we'll have to move the extractor one way or the other so it'll clear and go in. So it's in now. So then I'll do a trial fit on the firing pin stop to make sure I don't have to move the extractor back or forth to clear the slot. Take a look at the firing pin and the firing pin spring. These things, they'll collapse. They get real short over time. And it's an inexpensive part, and it's an important part, because that's what pulls the firing pin back after the gun goes bang. And these springs have an open end and they have a closed end. And the closed end is the one that you want to put on the pin and hold it there. So this will go in after we depress the plunger again. Oh, come on. So hopefully it'll just go click. Ah, perfect. So that's together. Put the barrel in and put the bushing in. nice and tight. The recoil spring, same deal, an open end and a closed end, and you want the closed end up against the guide rod head. So I kind of hold that assembly there. And our friend the lever is in the wrong spot. I just hate Series 80 pistols. And this is where you could really put the idiot scratch on it. So rather than just push up and hope I hit it and then wind up with a big scratch all the way up the slide, I tend to push in on them while I'm pushing up. So it's in, and then that's caught on the pin. Come on, go in there. So now it's in there. Put the plug back in. Put the guide rod back in, and I really don't like two-piece guide rods. And you could have a pistol like this with a one-piece guide rod in it, and you can push the plug back far enough to clear the front of it and turn the bushing out without having to use a wrench or anything. It's really no big deal. So it goes click, safety's on, that works, that one works. And it goes click. Put the grips back on it. And put the grips back on it. And put the screws in it, and we should be done.
Okay, so when you had the extractor out, you mentioned inspecting the hook to make sure it was all intact and everything. But even after you get it in the gun, you're looking for a certain amount of tension. Do you go by like kind of a by feel method, or do you have a specific resistance in terms of ounces of resistance to removing I see like these extractor adjustment tools where you stick it in there and then put a fish scale on it so you can always have it adjusted to 28 ounces or whatever. Is that really necessary? I mean, like it seems like 45s are pretty forgiving.
45s are really forgiving. Basically, if you got a hook anywhere in the rim area, it's going to come out. Other calibers, not so much. Mm-hmm. And I don't have just an empty here, so we'll use a classic Winchester Silvertip.
So you like to put the round under the hook and see how reluctant it is to fall out?
Well, I do a couple of things. Okay. That I'll slide it up under and see what's going on with this one. Is pretty good. It's dropping a little, but it's I can feel the tension on it. It's got plenty of tension. 45s, I think, are different from other calibers in where you want the hook in relation to the rim or the groove. 45, you want the rim of the case all the way against the extractor itself.
Into the slot.
Into the slot.
So the hook is not doing the tensioning.
The hook is not up against the groove at all.
Right.
The other calibers, 9 and 40, 38 Super, just about all of them, you want maximum hook depth because you really want to get a hold of that case with the pressures that they're operating at. Another thing a lot of guys do, yeah, it's a live round, is when they check it, they get it all the way down, all the way up. So it's at the top.
Which
of
it's
the
only
breech,
at
which is
when it's firing.
When it's firing.
Right, not when it's extracting.
So what you really want to do is, put a round or a dummy round in it. Push it all the way up so it's in battery.
Right.
And then I will look at where the lugs are, where the chamber clearing the lug. Just because when it's running, it's going to have somewhere 10 to 15 thousandths of clearance up there.
Between the roof of the slide and the exterior
Yes.
of the barrel.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll pull it down to that point and then pull the barrel out. And that is the position you really want to check tension and what's going on.
Because that's where the round is when it's actually being extracted.
And just a little bit lower than that, and it'll be past the fat part of the case. And
Right.
start, the hook will start coming over, and there's nothing there for it to hang on to.
Right.
So this isn't bad at all. And it's a feel thing. It's just something I've developed. I looked at was it the wagon gauge that pick your caliber and the fish scale and
Right.
go for 7 pounds and 2 ounces or whatever it is.
Right.
I go by feel.
Yeah. And I was messing with an extractor where I was certain that I had a problem with my extractor. And I was bending it in and bending it out. And I bent it out to the extent that there was no tension. And I bent it in to the extent that the gun wouldn't feed. And it still continued to extract. I mean, it didn't matter whether it had 0 tension or 5 pounds of tension. The extraction was never an issue.
So, 45s are just very forgiving. Come on out.
So you don't have any kind of an absolute, like it's got to be set to 28 ounces.
No.
You do it by feel.
And again, it depends on the pistol. On open pistols, I want a lot of extractor tension on them, just to the point where they almost aren't going to run. Mm-hmm. And if I can get it, when I just hand cycle it very slowly and get it to stall and stop, and it won't go, and then you just shake the pistol and it clicks shut, as far as I'm concerned, that's perfect.
Okay.
In that application.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm trying to do is get this thing out of here to show how we would adjust this.
And thanks to the magic of Series 80.
Yeah, it'll take about another half hour.
And while we're talking about Series 80, I know it's not necessarily specific to gunsmithing, but there's 2 popular firing pin blocks on the market. The Series 80, which you'll find in Colt and Para Ordnance and SIG and some other brands, and then the Swartz safety, which you find in Kimbers and Smith & Wessons. Do you have any... You hate them both equally, or
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The Swartz, not from the perspective of working on it, the Swartz is easier to work with, but it limits you in what you can do with grip safeties if you want to get into that area of modifying the pistol. That the Swartz safety operates on the lever on the grip safety coming up to push a pin up to basically move. In Kimber's case, it's almost like a guillotine that comes and straddles the firing pin from the top, compared to this where it's the trigger pushing back on the levers, which then push the plunger up to clear the firing pin.
Mm-hmm. So does
I think they're both unnecessary.
Does the Kimber grip safety differ dimensionally from other just kind of generic 1911 grip safeties to accommodate that?
I've never measured them, but I don't think so.
So you could put it like an Ed Brown or something
Yes.
into a Kimber, and it wouldn't deactivate the...
It's just something else, another point you have to check when you put it together.
Right.
So I use a wagoned extractor tool to adjust tension on the extractors. A lot of guys will say, well, just stick the guide rod head, or the extractor head back into the slide, and then just give it a bend. And I don't like that. And one of the things I don't like about it, it doesn't bend it in the right place. Because if you grab it, you're going to bend it back in here. And I want it bent where it's supposed to be bent. And this tool does it. It's repeatable. It's very controllable. You basically lay the extractor in, and I'm going to put a little bit more tension on it. So I want to bend the hook over, so you can see it start to flex. I'll go about to there.
Is that another by feel, whether
Yes.
it's actually taking a set or you're just flexing
Well, it'll move back.
Right.
And it came back, but it's got a little bit of a curve in it now, a little bit more. It's not as straight as it was. On some 9mm extractors, just really have to reef on them to get them to where you want them to be. So I'll stick this back in, and we'll put the firing pin stop back in to hold it, and then we'll see what happens with our round now. And before, it would droop a little bit when we let go of it. Mm-hmm. This is not going to droop now.
One of the methods, theories of adjustment that I read is that if it's a live round, it should droop, and if it's an empty case, it should stay immobilized. And that's if you're in that range of tension on a 45, that's probably going to work.
Dummies. This is still, it's moving just a little bit.
Right.
But you got the bullet hanging out there.
Right. Exactly. The weight of the bullet's going to drag it down. Yeah.
This will run fine for a long time.
Now, do you have any sense of what kind of a service life a good quality extractor, say again in just a 45 that you're not abusing, how many rounds it's going to last?
If it's set up correctly, if it's not contacting the rear of the barrel in this area, bumping it, God, they'll last a long time. 20, 30, 40,000 rounds.
Uh-huh. And do you think that if you've adjusted it and you need to readjust it, is that an indication that it's getting to the end of its life? You're going to have to replace it soon anyway? Or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Again, it depends on the application, the caliber, and what's going on with it. In my open guns, I tell everybody that I build one to go to Brownells and buy these two pieces because they need to learn how to use them. Mm-hmm. And in the open gun, when you go to push the extractor out, like in this pistol, I can just push it straight back with the hook, and it's out of there.
Right.
On a 9, it's got a bend in it here for a reason.
Right, to push the hook back.
And that's because you're going to be in here pulling the hook to the outside and pushing back at the same time. So the hook will clear the hole in the tunnel.
So is the hole is in the same place regardless of caliber?
Yes.
So the smaller the head diameter of the case, the deeper that hook has to go, and so the more you have to pry it out towards the sidewall to get it to come out.
To get it to come out. And conversely, when you fit them, they all have a fitting pad on them. And this is basically just polished and nothing's done with it. For a 9mm pistol, you'll cut just about all of this down and off of it to get the hook moved over to where you need it to be. Mm-hmm. And that's what then is going to catch on the breech face when you try to push it out the back. So to get it out, you have to push it over, and all of that movement on it over time is going to cause it to lose tension or at least change tension. Mm-hmm. And again, 9mm, they're just so filthy. Every time you clean the pistol, you do need to take the extractor out and clean the tunnel and then put it back and then check tension again. Mm-hmm. And if you have a 9mm open gun, you should have one of these and one of these.
Okay. So that's it for the basic disassembly, inspection, and reassembly of the 1911. Also some tips on extractor adjustment and other little tricks of the trade. If you have any questions for John about what we saw here or something that we didn't go into in enough detail, go ahead and send us an email at powerfactorshow@gmail.com. Or, you can catch up to us on YouTube or Facebook. So until next time, I'm Rick.
And I'm John.
See you later.